Good. Hello, everyone, and welcome our friend Jean-Michel. He is the CEO of Kralanx and the co-founder at BlockSpeak. Also, we here have Boris Pikolov, who's the head of business analytics team at Stobox, and myself, I'm the CEO of Stobox. Jean-Michel, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and please tell us more. What do you focus on? What's Kralanx security? What's your work in terms of blockchain, and how's the business going at the moment?
Okay, so a bit of background on Kralanx. It's a cybersecurity services provider that I started around 2 years back. Yeah, we've been up and running for about 2 years now, mainly pushing clients who were part of the blockchain island. And truth is, there aren't a whole lot of them left. It's just the reality of the situation. But I get the feeling that the situation will sort of find its own way to evolve. So that's a different story. On the other side, I co-founded a podcast called BlockSpeak, which is sort of like a generalist kind of podcast in the blockchain space. It's hosted by a legendary guy named Monty Mumford, who's a world-famous journalist. He used to write for Forbes, TechCrunch, Mashable, Wired, Business Insider, The Economist, and everything in between. Absolute star. We air an episode once a week. We've had guys like CZ, John McAfee, Brett King, etc. You name it. So yeah, I have a bit of a colorful background, and I guess that's me.
Yeah, we've seen your activity in BlockSpeak, and I think it's a great initiative. It's perfectly done. And my question, like the first question would be, I know that Malta started and kicked off with the blockchain initiative and being a blockchain island. What's up with Malta in terms of blockchain at the moment?
Okay, so I believe there are circa 20 entities pending approval, more or less, which is not much, to be fair. Though that being said, as an exchange, when you've got to put down sort of, I think the entire licensing process would just be just over a million euros.
Wow.
It's not a small amount of money to attract, you know what I mean? So I think there were a few mistakes which were made along the way. Of course, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the government. I'm just
sure.
A player in the industry, and this is my 2 cents kind of thing. But I think the biggest mistake was that there was a whole bunch of hype around the blockchain island at a time when the island itself was in its infancy. The project in itself was in its infancy. So it's all well and good to tout that you're gonna do something amazing, but to do that before you actually have a plan and a roadmap ahead and aligned is perhaps a little bit of a mistake. So and that's, I think, one learning point. To the government's credit, I would say that essentially they are the first country in the world that did begin the sort of regulatory and licensing process. Did they finalize it first? Absolutely not. but they took off from the race line first. So I mean from the start line first. So it's whenever you're pioneering something and the path isn't clear, there are obviously going to be lots and lots of issues. So I hope to see a couple of companies licensed by, I would say August, September. Again, if I had to stick my finger up in the air,
yep.
It was supposed to happen a little bit before, and then COVID struck and it got delayed further.
Another challenge.
Exactly,
Another challenge.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is exactly what happened to Stobox, because we met in Malta at the blockchain summit last year, where we were awarded as the asset of tokenization of the year. And we applied for all the licenses in Malta and spent a lot of time and efforts to acquire them. But same as with multiple other companies who were just expecting, we didn't get much of the results for the time being. That's why we had to switch jurisdictions. But I hope Malta will rehabilitate in their efforts and basically prove that it will be a blockchain island one day. We hope that it's a perfect place and it's a great place to be. I love it personally myself, and there's a great people there as well.
And
we hope that.
And I appreciate that. I mean, like as an idea, I think it was a great initiative. I think the MDIA, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, have done great things. The Malta Financial Services Authority, perhaps not so much. They need to get their act out. They need to get their act together. And I'm not at all shy to speak my mind, kind of thing. They need to wake up, because if they don't, then we're going to lose our edge. And this is a clear example of that, no?
We've been so keen in Malta that we actually did and wrote a book with the Maltese regulator on how to do digital securities in a compliant way.
Yeah, but the regulator was from MDIA, not MFSA.
Exactly. Yep. The MDIA are great guys, right? They've done, I feel at least, they've done almost everything right. I mean, like you're always gonna find some sort of criticism, so that's expected. But they really did a good job. It's just the MFSA that have been dragging their feet. You can't have progress without the two, just because of the way the system is designed and works.
But let's hope they will catch up one day, and we'll see Malta as a blockchain island again.
Make Malta great again.
Okay, thank you for that. We have more technical questions, and I will ask Boris to continue. He has that set of serious questions to Jean-Michel. Boris, please.
You mentioned that you work in the field of cybersecurity, and in particular, smart contracts audit on blockchain. So could you tell me more about the risks involved in deploying smart contracts on blockchain, and in general, using blockchain for your business in the financial industry and in other?
Okay, it's a very, very broad question. Let's dissect that a little bit. Let's talk about, first of all, what is a smart contract? And the best way it was ever explained to me is a smart contract is neither smart nor a contract. It's just a piece of code that's designed to govern a specific business process. The risks are very many, actually, and in some cases, the risks even outweigh the uses. I would say the risks are twofold. On one hand, you can, when creating the smart contract, you need to take into account every possible situation and every possible exception. So if you code for a particular scenario, and let me explain this in a different way. In the IT world, whenever you build some kind of code or you test, you build something called user stories, right? And user stories are potential outcomes or potential scenarios which can occur, and you test against those scenarios. Now, in the real world, when you write this code, you think of a couple of different scenarios, you list them down, and you test those real scenarios against that code and check that the expected outcome meets the projected outcome, and that's how you test. In the real world, though, when you deploy that code and you stick it out into the wild, more outcomes tend to present themselves. Why? Because as a developer, you only have a specific perspective. So you cannot think of all the possible user stories which can occur. And that, I would say, is probably the greatest possible risk when it comes to smart contracts, meaning an expected outcome would occur that the developer would not have thought of beforehand. So that would leave things in limbo. That's number one. Number two would definitely be the security vulnerability side, because obviously a developer, again, has his or her own bias, and that code would be, usually developers aren't security guys. They're two very, very different hats. So if you create a smart contract that can essentially be manipulated to exploit a vulnerability, it can render the entire smart contract null and void. Are there ways to solve this? Absolutely. Do people take the necessary requirements in order to mitigate such a risk? Usually, that's not the case. That being said, in the financial world, especially in the securities world, things become a lot easier, for the simple reason that digital securities have been around or securities per se have been around for a long, long time. So the potential use cases and the potential scenarios which can occur have probably already been figured out, because something's been around for long enough, right? So if you have someone with enough experience in the industry, they can say, listen, if you do X, then the result can either be Y, Z, A, or so you can potentially code for those scenarios. It's more like when you bring in possibly new scenarios which people aren't used to working with, and use a smart contract to govern those new scenarios where the risk really grows.
I absolutely agree that securities and traditional securities, they act in a way that it's already known to the public, it's already known to regulators, to all of the parties. So it's much easier to transfer to them to a digital ecosystem and make sure all this are correct in respect to other things that are new. And what you're telling us is absolutely correct. Thank you. Boris, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jean, for the comment. And Jean-Michel, from your perspective, which of the known public or private blockchains are better from the perspective of security? Which you usually advise to your clients if you have such opportunity?
Definitely a good question. I think there's, again, a couple of different sides to this argument. First of all, whether it makes sense to use a public or private blockchain for your specific use case, right? I think that is always an important argument, and I think there is no right answer. I think it depends very, very much on the situation. It depends on the use case. As far as which specific blockchains are good from a security perspective, Bitcoin is always the best from a security perspective. Why? Because it is by far the simplest. Think about it this way: if you have two cars, okay, and one car is let's say like an old Fiat 500, okay, really, really simple engine, very, very few moving parts. And then you have a Ferrari Pista, okay? The Ferrari Pista is going to go way faster, and it arguably looks better. But it's also got a lot more moving parts. So there's a lot more things which can go wrong at the end of the day. So this is why I say it's all very much about the use case. That Fiat 500 is so simple. The engine is so simple. The potential things that can go wrong are very, very limited. But if you want to go fast, Fiat 500 is not a good use case. It's not the way to do it, rather. So really, really depends on the situation. Luckily, we have things like the Lightning Network now on Bitcoin that can sort of solve the TPS issue, which is good. But again, maybe you don't need truly high TPS. Maybe you have different needs. So I don't know, let's say if you wanted to do something like micropayments, there's a network called Solana Beach that I think runs like 68,000 TPS or something ridiculous. But then it has a whole bunch of moving parts. So different stroke for different folks.
Yep, thank you.
Cool. Thank you for the insightful reply. Could you tell us more about the profile of your clients? What industries they come from? What interesting use cases you have mentioned? I'm asking these questions to get a better feel of what the blockchain landscape looks like now from your perspective, where the adoption is better and what are the main use cases are.
Okay, I did have a couple of clients in the settlement field that I thought was quite interesting. I mean, blockchain is a perfect use case for intercompany or intergroup financial settlements. The regulation may not always lend itself to the use case, but the tech actually works really well. Cryptocurrency itself is also a good use case. So there's one quite a public project that we're looking at working with, based around a smart city somewhere in Africa, without giving it away. So that's definitely an interesting use case. What I can say is, I think the market at the moment is still very much finding its footing. I think it's super early days. I thought the market was way more mature, and this is confession here. I thought the market was way more mature than it actually was. I thought that the 2018 pump and dump would have been a sort of culling of scammers, but that's clearly not the case. There's still a whole bunch of scammers, whole bunch. So I think it's still very much a Wild West, and traditional VCs and traditional financial institutions are still very wary of blockchain projects, as they should be, because it is what it is at the end of the day. That being said, there are a couple of really good projects out there. I have a couple of favorites, and Chili's is one of them. I think I'm not a sports fan at all, but I think it's fantastic use case. Though they are moving into esports now, so okay, kind of like that. And there's another cool project out there run by a good friend called peak.io. I can't really talk specifics now, but go and check it out. Super cool project.
And why do you think the adoption is much slower than almost everybody expected in the blockchain industry? Why corporations and institutions are deploying it so long? Is it because my assumption is that blockchain requires more of innovative thinking and changing business models, and not only reducing the expenses. It is making things more decentralized, and this requires somewhat new thinking, and rebuilding the existing operations, which is somewhat complicated. What is your vision on that, on these reasons why it takes so long?
Okay, great question. So for the most part, the only time you will ever really need to use a blockchain is when you have multiple parties involved that are looking to transact together. In doing so, you need all these parties to agree that the way that they're currently doing something could be improved. And getting the adoption of all those companies is a very long and painful process. So I'll give you a very simple example. So there is a project here being run by an insurance company called, well, it's not being run by actually, but an insurance company called Atlas Insurance here are taking part in it. And this is public information, you can Google it and do a bit of research. But essentially, they have a smart contract in place to automatically refund any users and individuals when a customer of theirs had a late flight. So Boris, for example, is insured with Atlas. you've bought flight insurance, Atlas grabs its system, plugs into an Oracle, the Oracle collects data of all the estimated and all the actual flight takeoff and flight landing times, and if there is a discrepancy, then automatically pay out Boris. So that's one system which is taking place. But in that specific scenario, you only really need to have the one insurance company on board, and whether you have one insurance company or 50 insurance companies, the benefit is the same, that one insurance company. For most blockchain projects, it's not like that. For most projects, you have to have those 50 companies say yes to you straight up. Otherwise, it makes absolutely no sense. You can apply this to, for example, supply chain management. Say, I don't know, just grab my phone, for example, right? They say OnePlus uses parts from a number of different suppliers. If only one of those suppliers is using supply chain management on a blockchain, it's useless. You have to have all the companies there, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So getting all those companies to say yes and change the way that they're is a really, really hard process. I know, because I've tried to accomplish it and failed many a time. So that is, I would say, the biggest drawback. It's of this, and this is the way we do things. Why should we change? COVID is perhaps a really good catalyst to bring about certain change.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit needs to be there, because while COVID has opened people's minds to potentially change, it's also made them really afraid to take that step. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Thank you. I have a question. So to your vision, what would be the first industries in adoption? Who drives that adoption? I mean, there is from banking to infrastructure to logistics. Like, from your experience, what do you think? Who will be the first? Who will be driving those adoption in terms of different industries?
Okay, definitely an interesting question.
Apart from digital securities, that we do, because securities,
of course, no, we won't mention that.
they're rushing, they're just going to digital and there. But besides that,
I would thought we would have seen something in supply chain management already, especially with the amounts of hundreds of millions of dollars lost in the scamming of people in the PPE market at the moment. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. If I really had to stick my finger up in the air, I'd probably say digital identity. I think that's by far the lowest hanging fruit, because if you have digital identity, the things that you can accomplish with it are incredible. Say, for example, I don't know, you have a crypto exchange, and the crypto exchange has, I don't know, let's say 10 million users, which are all KYC'd. Yeah, they can essentially use that KYC wallet to, let's say, offer the users the ability to sell their data to marketing companies, or they can use that digital wallet as their own personal identity to interact with, let's say, telcos or ISPs or even health professionals or the healthcare sector. So I would say digital identity is probably what will move first. Which country will do it? Sticking my finger up in the air again. Either Estonia, maybe Singapore, hopefully Malta.
Hopefully Malta.
By the way, in one of our previous interviews also, Fabian told us that he believes that digital identity is the next big thing in fintech, in particular for the unbanked, for whom it's important to receive financial services. For sure.
There's a project out there called Electronium, which is one that we work with. And that's exactly basically what they're aiming to do. It's banking the unbanked. I mean, you've got nearly nearly 1 billion people in Africa that don't have access to traditional banking systems because they don't have a traditional identification system. But they all have access to mobile phones. They all have data access. So, just give them a digital ID and go. And I personally think it would be hilarious if Africa was able to accomplish that before Europe. It just goes to show how broken the bureaucratic system is. No?
Sure, thank you. Jean-Michel, thank you for your time. Boris, thank you. I think like whoever would like to do a security check on their smart contract, Jean-Michel would be the best person to contact. And whatever you would like to do in STO, Stobox will be a good helper to you. Thank you guys. Thank you, Jean-Michel, and bye.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Bye.